Just to grow and say goodbye. Good good morning, guys. Oh my, we don't have any music. Por qué? Okay. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, and welcome again into my channel. This is Trev from Treveson, and today we are going to continue our morning routine. This has become, and we are loving it. This sounds a little bit too loud, though. Maybe that is better than it was before. But anyway, it is Wednesday morning, and I must tell you, it is the last day of the month of May of 2023. The year is moving on, moving along, just as time is moving on, waiting on no man. This morning, like every other morning, I must say good morning to you. I hope you are having a great day. I hope that whatever plans you have for today, you'll be able to get it to come true. And that you can join us this morning and every morning for the reading of the Bible. We are no theologians over here. Let me just make that clear. What we're actually doing is reading the Bible for ourselves. All our lives, we have been told what is and what is not in the Bible. And we have made some significant discoveries since we started reading the Bible some months ago. We have made some significant discoveries about what is in the Bible and what we thought was in the Bible. So if you have been following me, I hope you have been enjoying the discoveries, and I hope you continue to follow me as we try to read from Genesis through to Revelation. We are now on the book of First Kings. And just to recap what we read yesterday. Yesterday we went over chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe. And just a little recap about what we learned yesterday. Yesterday, as we were reading, we read about the two harlots who... Is this thing still too loud? No. Yeah, I think that is better. So yesterday, one story that stuck with me yesterday was the story of the two harlots. And if you were not here, let me just give a quick recap of that story. So there were two harlots. The two harlots, they lived together. Both of them had babies. One had a baby first, and then the other had a baby 3 days later. But during the night, the one who had just had the baby, her baby died. And so what she did was she went to the room of the woman who had the living baby, and she put the dead baby beside that woman, and she took the living baby. Now, when the woman woke up, tried to give her baby breast, she realized that the baby was dead. She later looked on the baby carefully. She realized that this is not my baby. When she brought it up to the other woman, the woman said, "Oh, no, that has to be your baby." When she looked at the other baby, she figured, yes, that baby looks like my baby, because every woman knows their child. The two women haggled about whose is the baby, whose is the dead baby, back and forth. The woman who now has possession of the living baby swore up and down that that was her baby. So the woman who now at possession of the dead baby, she says, we got to go to King Solomon because, King Solomon is judge and juror, king and executioner and all. So they decided that they were going to go to King Solomon for him to resolve this issue about whose baby it is. When they went to him, he said, how am I supposed to know whose baby it is? I wasn't there when you all had the babies. I don't know whose baby it is. I'm just going by your word about the baby. He said to his servants, you know what, in order for me to split justice between these two women, somebody bring me a sword. They brought him the sword. He says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the baby in half. So you take half and you take half of the baby. The woman who was in possession of the baby, but knew in her heart that the baby was not hers, she says, yes, cut the baby in two so she won't have a baby and I won't have a baby. The king said to the other woman, is she going to cut the baby in two? The other woman screamed. She said, no, don't cut my baby in two. Don't cut my baby, King Solomon. I would rather her keep my baby as long as my baby stay alive. And right there, the king said, bingo. The woman who said, cut the baby in two was not the real mother. So the king took the baby from her and gave the baby to the actual mother of the baby. And that is showing how smart and how wise King Solomon was. Because remember, according to the Bible, it says he was considered to be the wisest king, having written 3,000 proverbs and 105 songs. All right, and that was just one of the stories from yesterday. Now, also yesterday, we read how King Solomon and King Hiram joined together. They were both friends. King Solomon of Jerusalem and King Hiram were very good friends. And so King Solomon had asked for King Hiram to provide him with cedar and fir and lumber for him to build the house of God. And together with their resources and the people, Solomon was able to build the house of the Lord. Remember, the Lord had asked his father David to build it, but David was so preoccupied with wars. During David's reign, there was war around every day, and so he had to be tending to those wars. So he never got a chance to build the tabernacle. But during Solomon's reign, Solomon was able to build the tabernacle. The tabernacle was completed in August of his 11th year reign. Okay, so today we are going to be continuing the reading of the book of 1 Kings, and we are going to be reading starting from chapter 7. So if you have your book Bible or your Google Bible, get it and come along and let's read together. 1 Kings chapter 7. But Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished all his house. He built also the house of the forest of Lebanon. The length thereof was 100 cubits, and the breadth thereof was 50 cubits, and the height thereof was 30 cubits. Upon four rows of cedar pillars, with cedar beams upon the pillars. And it was covered with cedar above upon the beams that lay on 45 pillars, 15 in a row. And there were windows in 3 rows, and light was against light in 3 ranks. And all the doors and posts were square with the windows, and the light was against light in 3 ranks. And he made a porch of pillars. The length thereof was 50 cubits, and the breadth thereof 30 cubits. And the porch was before them, and the other pillars and the thick beam were before them. Then he made a porch for the throne where he might judge, even the porch of judgment. And it was covered with cedar from one side of the floor to the other. Verse 8. And if you're just coming in, I want to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, now is a good time to do so. Verse 8. And his house where he dwelt had another court within the porch, which was of the like work. Solomon made also a house for Pharaoh's daughter. Now remember, Solomon was married to a Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken to wife, like unto his porch. All these were of costly stones, according to the measures of hewed stones, sawed with saws, within and without, even from the foundation unto the coping, and so on the outside towards the great court. And the foundation was of costly stones, even great stones, stones of 10 cubits, and stones of 8 cubits. And the great court round about was with 3 rows of hewed stones, and a row of cedar beams, both for the inner court of the house of the Lord, and for the porch of the house. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. Now remember, Hiram was the king over there in Lebanon, and him and Solomon had formed a great collaboration actually in the building of the house of the Lord. Verse 14. He was a widow's son. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali. Okay, let's read that again. Verse 13. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widow's son, out of the tribe of Naphtali. And his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work. For he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 chapiters of molten brass to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of one chapiter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapiter was 5 cubits. And nets of checker work, and wreaths of chain work, and the chapiters which were upon the top of the pillars, 7 for the one chapiter, and 7 for the other chapiter. And he made the pillars, and 2 rows round about upon the one network, to cover the chapiter that were upon the top, with chapiters with pomegranates, and so did he for the other chapiter. And the chapiters, now this is not chapters, I'm saying chapiters. And the chapiters, let me turn the page here. Welcome into the live, guys. Welcome into the morning live. And the chapiters that were upon the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch, 4 cubits. And the chapiters upon the two pillars had pomegranates also above, over against the belly, which was by the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows round about upon the chapiters. 200 pomegranates. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple. And he set up the right pillar, and called the name thereof Jachin. And he set up the left pillar, and called the name of it Boaz. I wonder why he used the name Boaz. Boaz and Jachin, Jachin. You remember we read about Boaz in the book of Kings. Remember, Boaz was the man who married Ruth, who had come with Naomi from Moab and gone back to Jerusalem. And Boaz married Ruth, and they had the son called Obed, and Obed was the father of Jesse, who was David's father. So here we're coming down the line. There was Boaz. Boaz was the father of Obed, and Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David, and David was the father of Solomon. And now we are reading in the time of Solomon's reign. So let's read this again. Verse 21. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called the name thereof Jachin. And he set up the left pillar, and called it Boaz. And upon the top of the pillars was lily work. So was the work of the pillars finished. And he made a molten sea 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all around, and his height was 5 cubits. And a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And under the brim of it round about there were knops compassing it, 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about. The knops were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking towards one north, and 3 looking towards the west, and 3 looking towards the south, and 3 looking towards the east. And the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. And he made 10 bases of brass. 4 cubits was the length of one base, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, and 3 cubits the height of it. And the work of the bases was on this manner. They had borders, and the borders were between the ledges. And on the borders that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And upon the ledges there was a base above. And beneath the lions and oxen were certain additions made of thin work. And every base had 4 brazen wheels and plates of brass, and the 4 corners thereof had undersetters under the laver were undersetting molten at the side of every addition. And the mouth of it within the chapiter and above was a cubit, but the mouth thereof was round after the work of the base, a cubit and a half. And also upon the mouth of it were gravings with their borders, 4 square, not round. Welcome into the live, guys. Oh, Cuddy's here. Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing? So good to see you. As always, Cud. Wait, let me set up myself. Let me set up myself accordingly. How are you doing, my love? I am here reading about the measurements of this house that Solomon is building with his friend Hiram. We are on to verse 32. And upon the borders were 4 wheels, and the axletrees of the wheels were joined to the base, and the height of the wheel was a cubit and a half cubit. And the work of the wheels was like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axles, their axletrees, and their naves, and their felloes, and their spokes were all molten. And there were 4 undersetters to the 4 corners of one base, and the undersetters were of the very base itself. And in the top of the base was there a round compass of half a cubit height. And on the top of the base, the ledges thereof and the borders thereof were of the same. For on the plates of the ledges thereof and on the borders thereof, he graved cherubims, lions, and palm trees, according to the proportion of every one, and additions round about. Verse 37. After this manner he made the 10 bases. All of them had 1 casting, 1 measure, and 1 size. Then made he 10 lavers of brass. 1 laver contained 40 baths, and every laver was 4 cubits, and upon every one of the 10 bases 1 laver. And he put 5 bases on the right side of the house, and 5 bases on the left side of the house. And he set the sea on the right side of the house eastward, ever against the south. And Hiram made the lavers, and the shovels, and the basins. So Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he made King Solomon for the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars and the 2 bowls of the chapiters that were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiter which were upon the top of the pillars, and 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, even 2 rows of pomegranates for 1 network, to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters that were upon the pillars. And the 10 bases and 10 lavers on the bases, and 1 sea, and 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots and the shovels and the basins, and all these vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them, in the clay ground between Succoth and Zarthan. Verse 47. And Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceeding many, neither was the weight of the brass found out. So he decided that, all right, yeah, he's going to give all the measurements and everything, but he didn't weigh how much brass, because it was like it was just too many. Official SP, my love, what's up? How are you doing? How are you doing? Good to see you, my dear. Good to see you. Welcome into the live, my dear. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, guys. That fell from its perch. Yeah, so here we see Hiram and Solomon are making. Solomon is utilizing Hiram's expertise in creating the house of the Lord, and so they're sort of telling us all the measurements of everything that was used, and how they were put together, and what was done to create this to create the house of the Lord. Let us continue. Verse 48. If you're following with your book Bible or your Google Bible, follow along. Let's continue. Verse 48. And Solomon made all the vessels that pertained unto the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, and the table of gold, whereupon the shewbread was, and the candlesticks of pure gold, 5 in the right side and 5 on the left, before the oracle, with the flowers and the lamps and the tongues of gold, and the bowls and the snuffers and the basins and the spoons and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, to wit, of the temple. So was ended all the work that King Solomon made for the house of the Lord. And Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, even the silver and the gold and the vessels did he put among the treasures of the house of the Lord. That's the ending of chapter 7 of the book of 1 Kings. Now we're moving on to chapter 8. 1 Kings chapter 8. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast in the month of Ethanim, which is the 7th month. Here we are learning the days of, not the days, but the months of the year as it was back then. We are learning the months of the year. Yesterday we learned that the month of Ziv, Z-I-F, Ziv, was the 2nd month, February. We learned that the month called Bull was August, the 8th month. And today we are learning that the 7th month, was Ethanim or Ethanim, however you want to pronounce it. It is Ethanim. Ethanim. Okay, let us continue. This is verse 2. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast in the month of Ethanim, which is the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle, even those did the priests and the Levites bring up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitudes. You see, all that they were sacrificing, all the oxen and all the sheep were so many, they didn't even bother to number them. They were just so many. Verse 6 says, and the priest brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubim spread forth their 2 wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark and the stave thereof above. Remember yesterday when we were reading, it said the cherubims that were in the ark, there were two cherubims, and they were positioned in such a fashion that the one on the right, the tip of his right wing touched the wall, and the one on the left, the tip of his left wing touched the wall on that side, and the tip of both their wings met in the middle. So actually everything that was in the tabernacle was really covered under the wings of the cherubims. I mean, amazing, Amanji. How are you doing, sweetheart? So good. The first month, God says the first month of the Jewish calendar is September. So if the first, because when they have that celebration for the first year, that is September. Okay. So then when it talks about the second month, would that be October then? Is that where we're at, Kad? When I talk about the second month of Ziph, would that be their October? And then their Bull, which is their 8th month, would be, what would that be now? June, September? September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Would be April their 8th month? Is that where we're at, Kad? Talk to me. Oh. You say not? What that mean? No, May? Wait. September is the first month. September, October, November, December, January, February, March. What do you mean? If September you say is the first month, then the second month would be October. That would be Bull, right? Because they did say Bull was the second month. And then August, not Bull, Ziph was the second month. Ziph was February. I considered February. So Ziph would be their second month. Would that be October? And then August would be their 8th month. August, Bull would be their 8th month. So if you say the year starts in September, so September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So 8th month of April would be Bull, and then the 7th month would be March, right? I'm checking it correctly, ain't I? Because it said this Ethanim was the 7th month. Okay, so now we're on the same page. Right. So it would be September, October, November, December, January, February. The 7th month would be March. Yeah, okay. Now we're on the same page. All right. Joseph is here. Joseph, my love, how are you doing, my darling? So good to see you. Welcome as always, my dear. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you all here. The amazing M&G, 1SP, Card, and whoever else is in the background. I know we got some silent listeners. I want to say thank you too for coming in. I sincerely appreciate you. All right, let us continue with the reading. We are reading 1 Kings chapter 8 at the moment. So you can follow along in your book Bible or your Google Bible. All right. We are on to verse 3. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priest took up the ark, And they brought up the ark of the Lord, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. Even those did the priests and the Levites bring up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their two wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark and the staves thereof above. And they drew out the staves, that the ends of the staves were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without, and there they are unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the two tables of stone which Moses put there in Horeb. There was nothing in the ark save the two tables of stone which Moses put there in Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so only the two tables of stone were there in the ark, and those were the two tables of stone from Moses. Now by this time Moses had been dead for years, like 400 and some years. Verse 10, and it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister before the cloud, for the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord. Then spake Solomon, the Lord said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built thee a house to dwell in, a settled place for thee to abide in forever. And the king turned his face about and blessed all the congregation of Israel, and all the congregation of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which spake with his mouth upon David my father, and hath with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house, that my name might be therein, but I chose David to be over my people Israel. And it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And the Lord said unto David my father, Whereas it was in thine heart to build a house unto my name, thou didst well that it was in thy heart. Nevertheless, thou shalt not build the house, but thy son that shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house unto my name. And the Lord hath performed his word that he spake, and I was risen up in the room of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised, and have built a house for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And I have set there a place for the ark, wherein is the covenant of the Lord, which he made with our fathers, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. And Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands towards heaven. And he said, Lord God of Israel, there is no God like thee in heaven above or on earth beneath, who keeps covenants and mercy with thy servants that walk before thee with all their heart, who has kept with thy servant David my father, that thou promised him. You spoke also with thy mouth, and hast fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Therefore now, Lord God of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father, that you promised him, saying, There shall not fall thee a man, there shall not, I think that should be fail. There shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit on the throne of Israel, so that thy children take heed to their way, that they walk before me as thou hast walked before me. And now, O God of Israel, let thy word, I pray thee, be verified, which thou spakest unto thy servant David my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee. How much less this house that I have built? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Can't say where is Winsome. You know, say, to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know. I did not receive a text from her. Let me look again. Let me look here. I did not receive a text from her. I remember her saying that she was somewhere. She said she was near to me, but she didn't really say. She didn't text me where she was. So I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. But she will either be coming in later on, or she will come in when the live is over. She will come back to listen one way or the other. She will hear about it. Verse 27 said, But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee. How much less this house that I have built? And that is a great question there. Solomon is asking, will God dwell on the earth? Like, look how vast the heaven is. Look how vast the firmament is. So if that cannot contain him, why you think this little building here, this little church here, is going to contain him? What do you mean by that? Let us continue reading. I'm sure we'll find some clarification to Solomon's question. Verse 28. Yet have thou respect unto the prayer of thy servant, and to his supplication, O Lord my God, to hearken unto the cry and to the prayer which thy servant prays before thee today, that thine eyes may be open towards this house night and day, even towards the place of which thou hast said, My name shall be there, that thou may hearken unto the prayer which thy servant shall make towards this place. And hearken thou to the supplication of thy servant, and of thy people Israel, when they shall pray towards this place, and hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and when thou hearest, forgive. If any man trespass against his neighbor, and an oath he laid upon him, to cast him to swear, to cause him to swear, and the oath come before thine altar in this house, then hear thou in heaven, and do and judge thy servants, condemning the wicked, to bring his ways upon his head, and justifying the righteous, to give him according to his righteousness. When thy people Israel be smitten down before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall turn again to thee, and confess thy name, and pray, and make supplication unto thee in this house, then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy people Israel, and bring them again unto the land which thou gavest unto their fathers. When heaven is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee, if they pray towards this place, and confess thy name, and turn from their sin, when thou afflictest them, Then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy servants and of thy people Israel, that thou teach them the good way wherein they should walk, and give rain upon thy land, which thou hast given to thy people for an inheritance. Let me see what God said. It's the house of the Lord, not a house for the Lord. Huh? The house of the Lord. You know what it said? Like a church. Like a church. The house of God, the house of the Lord. I'm sure we'll get that clarification. Andrea is here. Andrea, what's up? How are you doing? Good to see you, Andrea. Good morning. I can see Cad typing something there. Joseph, Winsome, I've been hiding from. Yeah, Winsome playing hooky. 2 weeks now. She have some. Yes. She has some explaining to do. She gonna be put in the corner. Is that? Cad said it's not a place where he lives. Oh, of course not. Of course not. Not a place where he lives. A place where people go. A place where people go to worship him. I thought that was the understanding, wasn't it? I thought that was the understanding, that it was the house of the Lord, the house where the people go to worship him. I was just saying what Solomon said in verse 27, when he is sort of questioning, will God dwell on the earth? I guess he was questioning because if this is the house of the Lord, is he going to come in there? I think that was sort of an extraneous thought. Because if he is invisible, he doesn't need a house to dwell in. He can dwell in any small space. But we can always go back and take another look so that the understanding is clear. Yeah. Verse 25 says, therefore now, Lord God of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father, that thou promised him, saying, there shall not fail thee a man in my sight, to sit on the throne of David, so that thy children take heed to their way, that they walk before me as thou hast walked before me. And now, O God of Israel, let thy word, I pray thee, be verified, which you speak unto your servant David, my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee. How much less this house that I have built? Yeah, so here he's saying, well, this house that I have built, the heavens of heavens can't contain you, much less this house. So I believe it's an acknowledgement that it's not like he's an invisible being. So it's his house. The people go there to worship him, but it's not a house to live in. If that explains it anyway. Not that it needed an explanation, but as I was saying, let us continue. We are on to verse 37. of chapter 8 of the book of First Kings. If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, blasting, mildew, locusts, or if there be caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatsoever plague, whatsoever sickness there be. Hold on there, guys. I am going back because I want to see what is it that he's talking about. How did he get there? Verse 33. When thy people Israel be smitten down before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall turn again to thee, and confess thy name, and pray, and make supplication unto thee in this house. Okay. Then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy people Israel, and bring them again unto the land which you gave to their fathers. Okay, so here is sort of a dedication. Solomon is dedicating the house of the Lord to the Lord. This is the place where your children, your chosen people, the children of Israel, will come when they have sinned. They will come here and ask for your forgiveness. Verse 35. When heaven is shut up and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee, if they pray towards this place, and confess thy name, and turn from their sin, when thou afflictest them, then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy servants and of thy people Israel, that thou teach them the good way wherein they should walk, and give rain upon their land, which thou hast given unto thy people for an inheritance. So that is another confirmation of his dedication of the house of the Lord. He's saying this is the place where the children of Israel will come when they have sinned, when you have caused famine and drought upon them because of their sinful ways. They will come to this house, or they will pray towards this house. It's sort of like the Mecca for Christianity, then the Mecca for the children of Israel. They will turn towards this house. They will come into this house. They will pray. This is where they will talk to you and confess their sins so that they can have the Lord's forgiveness. Verse 37 said, if there be in the land famine, and there be pestilence, blasting, mildew, locusts, or if there be caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatsoever plague, whatsoever sickness there be, what prayer and supplication soever be made by any man, or by all thy people Israel, which shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands towards his house, towards this house. Then hear thou in heaven, thy dwelling place, and forgive, and do, and give to every man according to his ways, whose heart you know. For thou, even thou only, knows the hearts of all the children of men, that they may fear thee all the days that they live in the land which thou gave to their fathers. Moreover, concerning a stranger that is not of thy people Israel, but comes out of a far country for thy name's sake. Let's hear what they're going to say concerning this stranger. Verse 42, for they shall hear of thy great name, and of thy strong hand, and of thy stretched out arm, when he shall come and pray towards this house. Hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calls to thee for, that all people of the earth may know thy name, for will know thy name, to fear thee, as do thy people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have built is called by thy name. If thy people go out to battle against their enemy, whithersoever thou shalt send them, and shalt pray unto the Lord toward the city which thou hast chosen, and towards the house that I have built for thy name, then hear thou in heaven their father and their supplication, and maintain their cause. Verse 46. If they sin against thee, for there is no man that sins not. You hear that? But if they sin, for there is no man that can live without sin. No man. Let's read this again. Verse 46. If they sin against thee, that should say not if, but when. When, not if. But it says here, if they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives unto the land of the enemy, far or near. Yet if they shall be this is one contradiction right here. If they sin, but we know they are going to sin, you're going to deliver them to the enemy so the enemy can carry them away as slaves into a far away land. If they sin, but you know they are going to sin because they are humans. Exactly, God. Exactly. It's not an if anymore, it's a when. Because here is the acknowledgement that every man sin. There is no man that does not sin. But at the same time, he's saying, if they sin against you, you shall make the enemy take them captive and take them away to a far land. That means every man is deserving of being captured by the enemy and taken away to a far land. But anyway, let us continue. Verse 47. Yet, if they shall bethink themselves in the land whither they were carried captives, and repent, and make supplication unto thee in the land of them that carried them captives, saying, we have sinned, and have done perversely, we have committed wickedness, and so return unto thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, which led them away captive, and pray unto thee towards their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, the city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name. Then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause. And forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they be thy people and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant, and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee. For thou didst separate them from among all the people of the earth, to be thine inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when you brought our fathers out of the land of Egypt, O Lord. And it was so that when Solomon had made an end of praying all those prayer and supplication unto the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread up to heaven. And he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord that hath given rest unto his people Israel, according to all that he promised. There hath not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us, that he may incline our hearts unto him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, which he commanded our fathers. And let these my words, wherewith I have made supplication before the Lord, be nigh unto the Lord our God, day and night, that he maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel at all times, as the matter shall require, that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and that there is none else. Let your heart therefore be perfect with the Lord our God, to walk in his statutes and to keep his commandments, as at this day. And the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before the Lord. And Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto the Lord. 22,000. Wow. That is 22,000 oxen was the sacrifice that he offered. 22,000. Verse 63. And Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto the Lord. 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. The same day did the king hollow the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord, for there he offered burnt offerings and meat offerings, and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar that was before the Lord was too small to receive the burnt offering. It's got to be too small. If you are offering 20,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep, my God, 120,000 sheep would fill up the entire Saint Anne. 120,000 sheep. Good Lord. Plus 20,000 oxen offered. Wow. The altar was too little to receive the burnt offerings and meat offerings and the fat the fat of the peace offerings. And at that time Solomon held a feast, and all Israel was with him, a great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of Egypt, before the Lord our God, 7 days and 7 days, even 14 days. So that feast was for a whole 14 days. Verse 66, and this is the last verse of chapter 8. On the 8th day, he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and went into their tents joyfully and glad of heart for all the goodness that the Lord had done for David his servant, and for Israel his people. Okay. So the people left the feast celebrating. That is indeed some kind of a feast. That is indeed some kind of a feast. We are going to move on to chapter 9. Hey, Tuba Chat, how are you doing? So good to see you. Thank you, Tuba Chat. Thank you so much, my dear. Good to see you. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Now we are going to move on to First Kings chapter 9. So if you're following with us with your book Bible or your Google Bible, we appreciate it. Let us continue. So now the tabernacle, the house of the Lord, has been built. It's completed. And Solomon has gone in and he has prayed. He has dedicated the building to the Lord. Prayed the holy prayer, asking the Lord to be with the children of Israel, to punish them when they needed punishment, and provide for them, love them, care for them, and all that. And all that. And and afterwards, after praying this prayer, he goes out. He had to make this new the fire pit. He had to make this fire pit out in the front of the tabernacle because he could not perform this ritual, this sacrificial ritual inside of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was too small. The tabernacle could not fit 120,000 goats. 120,000 sheep and 20,000 oxen. It couldn't fit. So he had to perform that sacrifice outside of the tabernacle. And that's where he did the sacrifice. And all the people of Israel came to the sacrifice. And it lasted for 14 days. And I'm surprised it didn't last longer. If you are killing 120,000 sheep and 20,000 cows, I'm surprised it didn't take much longer than that. Chapter 9. And it came to pass, when Solomon had finished the building of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire which he was pleased to do, that the Lord appeared to Solomon, and the Lord appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared unto him at Gibeon. And the Lord said unto Solomon, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built, to put my name here forever. And my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. And if thou wilt walk before me, as David thy father walked, in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded thee, and wilt keep my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom upon Israel forever, as I promised to David thy father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man upon the throne of Israel. But if he shall at all turn from following me, he and your children, and will not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them, then will I cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them. And this house which I have hallowed for my name will I cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people. Verse 8. And at this house which is high, everyone that passed by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss, and they shall say, why hath the Lord done this upon this land, and to his house? And they shall answer, because they forsook the Lord their God, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have taken hold upon other gods, and have worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath the Lord brought upon them all this evil. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years When Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord and the king's house. Now, Hiram, the king of Tyre, had furnished Solomon with cedar trees. Okay, remember we had read that? Hiram, the king of Tyre, had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees and with gold, according to all his desire. That then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Okay, so you see that was sort of an exchange, you know, sort of a quid pro quo, maybe, you know, because over there in Tyre, over there in Lebanon, Hiram had lots of cedar and fir trees, and Solomon wanted cedar and fir wood to build the temple of the Lord and also to build his house. So Hiram provided that for him, and now we are hearing that in exchange for that, Solomon, with his authority over all the land, he gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. Him not happy. Oh, so Tyre is not Hiram. Hiram is not happy with the cities that Solomon has given him. I wonder why. Let's read on. And verse 12. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. And he said, What cities are these which thou hast given me, my brother? And he called them the land of Kabul unto this day. The land of Kabul unto this day. And Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. And this is the reason of the Levi. Verse 15. And this is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised to build the house of the Lord and his own house and Milo and the wall of Jerusalem and Azor and Megiddo and Gezer. That was the significance of the six talents of gold that Hiram sent to Solomon. Let's read that again. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. And he said, What cities are these which you give me, my brother? And he called them the land of Kabul unto this day. So the land of Kabul is what Hiram called the 6 cities that Solomon gave him in Galilee. And Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. And this is the reason for the levy which King Solomon raised, to build the house of the Lord and his own house and Milo and the wall of Jerusalem and Azor and Megiddo and Gezer. For Pharaoh king of Egypt had gone up and taken Gezer and burnt it with fire and slain the Canaanites that dwelt in the city and given it for a present unto his daughter Solomon's wife. Oh. Okay. And Solomon built Gezer and Beth Horon the nether, and Baalath and Tadmor in the wilderness in the land, and all the cities of store that Solomon had, and cities for his chariots, and cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion, and all the people that were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, which were not of the children of Israel. Their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able utterly to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service unto this day. So here, Bill, that's my first thought. That's my first thought, card. And so that has forced me to look on the map, to look on the world map to see what is the distance. What is the distance? Because here we are talking about Jerusalem. We are talking about Jerusalem. And even though the Kabul is spelled with a C, I'm wondering if that is the same place. So let me see. Where can I find? Oh, this won't extend any further. I can hardly look on it this way. Let me see. Because that is Australia, that is Russia. Where would Kabul be? Not there, not in North America. I'm sure it has to be over. Kabul would be over on this side here. All right, let me take a look. I can't see. So let me do this. Let me look for Kabul. I'm looking here for Kabul to see how close it is. How close is it to Jerusalem? Let me see, to Jerusalem. Well, let me see what Google says. Where is it? It's not too far. It's not too far. So it seems like it's real. It's only a 48-hour drive. It's only a 48-hour drive. So I'm not surprised. That seems like true. I'm just looking here. I mean, to me, that looks like it. You would have to cross over Iraq and Iran to get to Kabul in Afghanistan. Well, as I'm looking here, yeah, as I am looking here, I do not know the geographical history of that area, so I don't know. I know the Bible already, it has mentioned Syria, which is right there by Jerusalem. It has mentioned, I'm sure this has to be, it hasn't mentioned Iraq, but geographically Iraq could have been named afterwards. If anybody else know, you can say it in the chat, but I do not know the geographical history of right here. But here it says it takes 2 days. It's 2 days from Jerusalem to Kabul. So I could see that being true when I think about how while reading the Bible, I have developed this mental picture of the long distance that they have to travel to go from city to city. And if he was giving Hiram 6 cities, it can't be just 6 little cities like, oh, just a district. It had to be large cities, countries even. So that doesn't surprise me at all. It's not like outlandish, like he's saying, okay, go and take South America. And they're all the way over there in the Middle East. So it's not too far-fetched. Let us continue. Let us continue. We are going to read verse 21 again. Their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel were not able to utterly destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service until this day. So he is not making the descendants of the children of Israel to be bond servants, but he is making the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites. He's making them bond servants. For those of you who have been with us, when we read on this, the book called On This Foundation, we saw where Malchijah and the other rich councilmen took poor young people as bond servants, people who couldn't pay their debts to them. They would take their children as bond servants. So here they are taking the Hivites, the Hittites, the Amorites as bond servants. But I don't know, that would be kind of scary for me to take. Stick up in and read on. You would have the crossover here. Stick up in and move on. Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Let me see what other chastisement come in here. Okay, so as I was saying about the bond servants, it is kind of weird that they would be so comfortable to take their enemies as their bond servants. Because remember, the bond servants are going to be the ones working in their household, cooking and cleaning and serving them food and being close to them. I wouldn't want somebody who I am treating as a slave to do all of that. But I guess there was no fear back then. They didn't have any in that regard. Verse 22 of chapter 9. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondsmen. All right, you see? He didn't make anybody of the children of Israel any bond servants. He only made the enemy. But they were men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and rulers of his chariots, and his horsemen. These were the chief of the officers that were over Solomon's work, 550 of them, which bear rule over the people that wrought in the work. But Pharaoh's daughter came up out of the city of David unto her house, which Solomon had built for her. Then did he build Milo. And 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar which he built unto the Lord. And he burnt incense upon the altar that was before the Lord. So he finished the house. And King Solomon made a navy of ships. Oh, that's where they get the word navy from. Okay. God. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what was done to us. That's exactly that was done to people of my complexion. That's exactly what was done. Hmm. Let us continue. Verse 24 again. But Pharaoh's daughter came up came up out of the city of David unto her house which Solomon had built for her. Then did he build Milo. And 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar which he built unto the Lord. And he burnt incense upon the altar that was before the Lord, and he finished the house. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion Geber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. And they came to Ophir, and Ophir, that's a place, Ophir, and fetched from thence gold, 420 talents of gold, and brought it to King Solomon. We are going to be moving on. Let's see, what time is it? Okay, 7:48. We are going to be moving on to chapter 10. Chapter 10. I don't understand if I am cooking and cleaning and being in the house of somebody who has captured me. Why are they still? That's my question, sister. That is my question. That's a different level of loyalty there. You know, if you capture the slave and you make the slave be cooking your food, knowing what you have done to them, that you have taken them against their will. But I guess at that time they understood that, well, he's the king and I am the servant, just like they accepted their lot, that I'm going to be the servant of the king. So this is my lot. So, hey, I'm just going to do it and be good at it. Maybe that was their thought at the time. These modern day people, you couldn't do that. And you wouldn't dare try either. Chapter 10. And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bear spices, and very much gold, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hidden from the king, which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all of Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the meat on his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their clothes, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up unto the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, it was a true report that I heard in my own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit I believed not the words, until I came, and my own eyes had seen it, and behold, the half was not told to me. Thy wisdom and prosperity exceeds the fame which I have heard of. Happy are thy men, happy are these thy servants. You see, I tell you, the servants were indeed happy. They were happy to be servants of the king. So certainly they They were not displeased with the fact that they were taken captive. They were happy to be taken captive. The Queen of Sheba says, thy servants which stand continually before thee, and that hear thy wisdom. They are all very happy, of course. Verse 9, blessed be the Lord thy God, which delights in thee, to set thee on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he thee king, to do judgment and justice. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices very great store, and precious stones. There came no more such abundance of spices as these which the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. And the navy also of Iram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees and precious stones. Almug trees. And the king made of the almug trees pillars for the house of the Lord, and for the king's house, harps also, and psalteries for singers. There came no such almug trees, nor were seen until this day. And King Solomon gave unto the Queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside all which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 600 threescore talents of gold. That was 666. 666. You hear that? All right. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 600. Three scores is 60, and 6. So that's 666 talents of gold. Beside that, he had of the merchantmen, and of the traffic of the spice merchants, and of all the kings of Arabia, and of the governors of the country. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one target. And he made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 pounds of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with the best gold. The throne had 6 steps, and the top of the throne was round behind. And there were stays on either sides of the place of the seat, and 2 lions stood beside the stays. Verse 20. And 12 lions stood there on the one side and on the other upon the 6 steps. There was not the like made in any kingdom. And all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was nothing accounted of in the days of Solomon. So I guess silver wasn't considered to be the most precious, or among the very precious elements. Gold is still considered to be more precious than silver even now. Verse 21, and all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels in the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was nothing accounted of in the days of Solomon. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Iram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. And apes. Where was the Tarshish coming from? That's a whole lot of gold. A whole lot. So it said they were coming, the navy of Tarshish with the navy of Iram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. Was the navy of Tarshish coming from Africa? Was the navy of Tarshish coming from the coast of Africa? Let's see. The navy of Tarshish. And it is spelled Tharsh. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, ships of Tarshish refer not to ships from a particular location, but to a class of ships. But where were they coming from? Tarshish is taken to the coastal area of Spain near current-day Seville and Cartagena. Okay, let us go. From Ethiopia. Okay. Okay, from Ethiopia. Let us continue. So this Tarshish ship fleet is bringing ivory and gold and silver and apes and peacocks to Jerusalem. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. And all the earth sought to Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and garments and armor and spices, horses and mules, a rate year by year. So every year they brought Solomon riches on top of riches. So he had more and more and more and more. And Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the cities for chariots, and with the king at Jerusalem. And the king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars made he to be as the sycamore trees that are in the vale for abundance. And Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt, and linen yarn. The king's merchants received the linen yarn at a price. So here Solomon was just building his wealth. He was getting the best of the best from wherever he could get it. The gold, the silver, the ivory, apes and peacocks, horses and mules and garments and spices, and you name it. He was the king after all. So he wanted to make sure that his kingdom looked like it, smelt like it. Everything around his kingdom needed to represent himself as a mighty and wealthy king. Remember, Queen of Sheba said to him all that she had heard about his kingdom when she came and saw it for herself. What she had heard was nothing compared to what she had seen for herself. Verse 29, and this is the last verse of chapter 10 of the book of First Kings, and it's also the last verse for the reading for today. Verse 29. And a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means. So they brought just about everything they could to the King Solomon to make sure that he was continually enriched with the best of everything. And the people were willing to bring all these things. The people were willing to source all these things and bring them into the king's storehouse so that the king could be, his wealth could be flaunted, you know. Everybody could see, yes, this is the king. And I think it's the same way people operate today. Like if you see people sending gifts to the king. You remember when we read the book Spear from Prince Harry? How he said that there was a whole basement. There was a whole basement in England. A whole basement in the palace where the queen put all the gifts. So people be sending gifts from all over the world to the queen. The queen ain't drinking that bottle of wine. The queen ain't opening that jewelry box. No, they're not. They put them all in that storeroom and nobody's allowed to take anything out of there. So what is the storage for? It has said that his gold mines were found in Saudi Arabia. Oh, okay. That was where he had stored his gold? Because he certainly had a ton of gold. He had lots and lots and lots of gold and silver and brass and ivory and everything else that the people had brought for him. But he was beating them down to, didn't he? It say that he used the gold to make shields and swords and drinking vessels and all those things. So I guess he wasn't just hoarding the gold. He was making sure that everything around him, everything in his house was golden. He put gold over everything. Gold over the beams and gold over the stools and the altar and the chairs and everything. He was putting gold over because he wanted to make sure that his place looked the part. If I'm the king, I want my place to look the part. I want to look the part. So he got the best, the finest linen out of Egypt to make the garments for himself and also for the servants, because he wanted the servants who worked in his home to also look rich, because that was a representation of him and his household. So everybody and everything looked rich. The horses were all decked out. The mules, the donkeys, everything. The chariots were decked out. Everything showed that they were from the king. And they represented the king. All right. So guys, that is going to be the end of this morning's reading. I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the reading this morning. For AG and Cad and Joseph and Andrea, M&G, and everybody else who came in. And more importantly, the silent listeners, those of you who stay on the outside and look in, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for listening. I sincerely appreciate you. We meet here every morning. We read the Bible just about every morning. And this morning we read from the book of 1 Kings, chapters 6 through 10. When we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading from Orphi, God says, Orphi is in the Arabian Peninsula today. So, yeah, right around that same region there. I'm going to take a look at the map and see and get a geographical an idea of the geographical location of these places. But remember, a lot of the countries that exist today were not in existence then. It was as they go along, they named these places. So King Solomon was the king over all of that region. So he could have, I can see how he would have been able to distribute lands all the way from Jerusalem to Kabul, up north, go down south, across the River Jordan, up to the Red Sea. All of that he was responsible for. So he could have distributed the land just about any way he chose. And the names could have been changed through history. Because you know that as we've been reading, the children of Israel were continuously changing names of places. If they took over a place, somebody took over a city, they renamed the city after themselves. And that's what we have been seeing in the reading. So that would explain how different places would have different names. The names kept changing based on the person who was ruling over that plot of land at that time. God. Okay. All right. So guys, that is going to be it for this morning. It was an absolute pleasure being here. I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the live. Thank you all so much. We are going to go off now and have ourselves the great day that we deserve. So go ahead, guys, and have yourselves a great day and meet us back here tomorrow. It's going to be later though. Tomorrow it's going to be around, maybe around 8 o'clock, 8:30, somewhere around there. We will meet again and we will continue the reading of the Bible. Until next time, my friends, this is Trev from Traversense, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, everybody.